I had never thought about becoming a surrogate mother before being asked by my neighbor, Johnny Willard. Johnny was old, like as old as dirt, with a squint, and one of the coolest guys I knew. He lived in a big old farmhouse with just him and a whole bunch of hunting dogs. He made his living doing a bit of farming and a bit of trapping. I'd already thought that Johnny was pretty awesome, but when he presented me when I was 6 years old with a newly hatched baby duck with a birth defect that made it hard for the little duckling to walk without falling over, I didn't hesitate to say yes to being a mom for the first time. I took that little yellow duckling under my wing and I fell in love. He was yellow and fluffy with a small orange beak. His 2 little feet turned in slightly when he walked, causing his little bum to waddle in the most adorable way. Baby ducks don't start getting their grown-up feathers until a couple of weeks after they're born, so he just had bumpy little fuzzy yellow baby wings. He'd stare up at me with his shiny black eyes and say, "Cheep, cheep, cheep." So I called him Cheaper, and I brought him home. This is the start of a story I told at a Hong Kong Stories event called 24/7 Times of Our Lives. I'm going to use it to show you how you can find your story to tell. I'm Rachel Smith, and I'm a storyteller, artist, educator, and podcaster based in Hong Kong. I've been telling stories on stage and teaching other people how to tell their stories on stage for the past 8 years. I'd like to share what I've learned with you and help you to learn the art of storytelling. Stories are around us everywhere, all the time. Stories are used to communicate and build connections. They teach us how to be better members of society. They pass on morals and values. They can help you to get a job, make new friends, motivate and educate. Stories keep us alive. But not all stories are created equal. The best stories are stories that directly relate to our lives, that speak to us as human beings. The best stories don't need inside information or cultural understanding to make sense. I want to teach you that your story doesn't need to be the most amazing thing that you've ever experienced, although it could be. It doesn't have to be the saddest or the funniest thing you've ever thought of to be a good story. Anybody can tell stories, and everyone has a story to tell. So let's learn how to tell your story better. Good storytelling is a skill that you can develop. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the better it becomes. Stories told well can connect with your audience. A well-told story can make someone feel less alone. It can show people an alternative way to behave. It can even change someone's mind, which is a pretty powerful piece of magic. Now, here's a bit more about the story of my little duck. Growing up in a family of 5 kids on a farm meant my parents had a high tolerance for impromptu pets. Little fuss was made when the little yellow addition to the family was brought home. My mother found a cardboard basket with a handle for him to sit in so that I could carry him around, and gave me an old dish towel to line it and make him more comfortable. She also established some ground rules. No ducklings on the table while we were eating. I had to make sure he had food and water and some time alone to rest. I could fill the sink with water for him to practice swimming in, but wasn't to make a mess and had to clean it up myself if I did. I also had to clean up any messes he made, and he was to stay in his basket at night, on the floor, next to my bed, and not run around on my nice quilt that my mother made for me. Which all seemed pretty fair. And Cheaper and I had a great time. I brought him outside for little wee walks on the lawn and had a great time telling my younger brothers that they couldn't play with him because they'd be too rough. After the family finished dinner, I was even allowed to let him run about on the table and eat any spilled vegetables. I filled the sink for him and let him swim around. I could just tell that he loved me as much as I loved him, and that we were going to be best friends. It seems pretty fair, doesn't it? I get a totally random new pet, and my mom makes rules to keep everyone happier. I'm sure that when you were small, there were adults in your life who made rules too. And I'm pretty sure there was times when you broke them as well. Telling a personal story always involves some risk. Your audience may judge you, or think you're stupid, or make bad decisions. But what years of live storytelling has shown me is that when you tell your story, well, when you choose to take that risk, your audience will applaud your bravery. So how do we start? We start with an idea. This idea is something that happened to you. It's a true event, and you are the main character. It's also an event that you want to tell someone else about. Please do not reveal your deepest, darkest secrets. Keep them as your secrets. We don't want to hear that part. But tell us about some time that something happened to you that was absurd, or funny, or kind of crazy, or something that moved you and made you feel happy, or pleased, or satisfied. A story that when you tell it to someone else, you start with, "You'll never believe what happened to me." You have one. Everyone does. I taught a class a while ago, and the students had stories about lost pets, lying to parents, cheating on exams, getting caught, getting a terrible haircut, tricks their brothers played on them, and even one about getting chased by a goose. So let's find your story.
Have a listen to these prompts and the examples, and then pause the video and write down 3 story ideas of your own. First prompt: a time when you were worried. My story for this prompt would be the time I was so worried I'd be late to meet a new student that I forgot to check the date and arrived an entire day early. Do you remember a time when you were so worried it was distracting? What were you worried about? Prompt number 2, meeting a new friend. I once met someone during a number 8 typhoon, and then, a little while later, I married him. How did you meet your best friend? Have you ever met someone once and then never seen them again? Prompt number 3, something you lost. I once accidentally deleted an entire project. I spent a few unforgettable moments thinking about all the hard work I put into it until my brother came and helped me to recover it. Phew! What's the one thing you've always regretted losing? Prompt number 4, a journey you took. I used to love visiting my grandma. She would give me cookies and sweets that my mum never let me have. Have you got a special place that you go to that makes you happy? Prompt number 5, an embarrassing event. I once fell off my bicycle into a huge puddle in front of a lot of people. Have you ever been embarrassed by something you've done? Prompt number 6, something that happened on vacation. I was hiking in England once and got harassed by a squirrel. What adventures have you gotten up to when outside of Hong Kong? You have heard some of my ideas from the story prompts now, and hopefully they've reminded you of some of your stories. Now pause this video and write 3 story ideas. They should only be 1 sentence long. Remember, only 1 sentence for each idea. Keep these sentences handy. We'll be using these later. Now let's get back to the story.
At night, my mom came to tuck us in before bed. She made the rounds of all the rooms and even gave Cheaper a peck on the beak to say goodnight when I insisted. She put his little basket down on the floor and then waited until I said my prayers and kissed me goodnight as well. After she left, I rolled over and looked over the side of my bed at my little bird settled down in his basket. He looked so adorable and fuzzy and, well, maybe just a little bit lonely. He let out a couple of sad little cheep cheeps, and I thought, he needs to be nearer to me, his mum, so he knows that I love him. And I reached down and I picked up the whole basket and put it beside me on the bed. There. He looks so much happier now. I fell asleep, my arms around the basket, dreaming of the fun that me and my duck would have tomorrow.
The sweet dreams of a child. So far, it's just a story about a loved pet. It goes on. But first, let's have a look at some of the story ideas you've written down. Now, think of a good friend. Got their image in your mind? Imagine you're reading the story to this good friend. Pause the video for a minute and read them out loud. If you're somewhere where you can't talk out loud, whisper quietly. Now imagine that your friend says, "Tell me more about that story." This is the story that you want to tell, because a good storyteller always keeps the audience in mind. Our favorite stories are not always what the audience wants to hear. Of course, if you want to know for sure, you can always call your friend and ask them. It might be fun to see if you're right. We're coming to the end of this video, and I'm going to play you the last bit about my story about my little duck Cheaper.
After she left, I rolled over and looked over the side of my bed at my little bird settled down in his basket. He looked so adorable and fuzzy and, well, maybe just a little bit lonely. He let out a couple of sad little cheep cheeps, and I thought, he needs to be nearer to me, his mum, so he knows that I love him. And I reached down and I picked up the whole basket and put it beside me on the bed. There. He looks so much happier now. I fell asleep, my arms around the basket, dreaming of the fun that me and my duck would have tomorrow. In the morning, I woke up and the first thing I did was roll over to look into the basket for my little Cheaper. But he wasn't there. I sat up. No duck. I checked under the bed. No duckling. I had left my bedroom door closed, so he couldn't have gotten out. Then I lifted the bed covers I tangled around myself during the night. And there, flat as a pancake and just as dead, was Cheaper. During the night, he'd hopped out of his basket and had probably cuddled up to my warm, sleeping body, not knowing that I was a very heavy sleeper. I must have rolled over on him during the night and crushed him, oblivious in sleep of his feeble little cheeps and struggles as his life slipped away. I was not a mother. I was a murderer.
Stories have a power to influence the person listening. They can show a solution to a difficult problem or show how to avoid a really bad choice. They can even show you, in a really tragic way, why you should listen to your mother. So why not give storytelling a try? Now that you have a story idea, you can move on and build your story from it. The next video will teach you about developing your story, where we'll talk about the elements and explore how to structure your story in an engaging and captivating way. In the meantime, here's how you can get involved in storytelling in your own community. Get in touch with Hong Kong Stories. You can find details of what they do on hongkongstories.com.